everyone present over. I, Satyajit Nanda,
And I, Shilpika Banerjee.
on behalf of Dot Club, takes immense pleasure to welcoming you all to the most interacting and engaging session on the topic Building Analytics Venture, organized by Dot Club, the official technomanagerial club of IBS-Hyderabad. Dot Club aims to foster learning and awareness of technology and its application in today's world and to enable students to aid in all aspects of technology in the future. Talking about the topic, analytics venture is home to a large number of data scientists with unmatched credential in the field of artificial intelligence, coupled with an impassioned desire to see the results of their work come to life in the real world. Hence, in this line of knowledge, today we have with us a renowned industry expert who is the master of analytics using artificial intelligence. He is none other than Mr. Amardeep Sibia, sir, who has made us inspired in his distinguished work in numerous capacities.
During this pandemic, the world has witnessed that how technology has helped us grow and connect in its truest form. But today, I would like to introduce you to a person who knew the importance of artificial intelligence and technology from the very beginning. He is none other than our esteemed guest. Mr. Sibia is the founder and CEO at Drishya AI Lab, headquartered in Bengaluru, which was founded in the year 2019. The team of Drishya AI Lab make energy operations more efficient by using artificial intelligence. He has spent over 25 years of international experience and has over 17 years in Goldman Sachs in the United States, United Kingdom, and in India, where he led various engineering and operation teams. Apart from being an alumni of IIM Bangalore, he is also a member of Confederation of Indian Industries National Committee of IT. His domain interest lies in entrepreneurship, analytics, big data, machine learning, and much more. Before we move ahead, I request you all to kindly maintain the decorum. I request everyone to switch on your cameras and mute your microphones. And you could feel free to ask your queries in the chat box. And now, with no further ado, I would invite our guest on our digital platform to carry on with the lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. So thanks for the kind introduction. What I will do is I have a few slides and I'll share that. And we shall see how much time we take to go through this. Okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, okay. So, as I mentioned, I'm in the business of analytics and specifically in the energy sector. But before we get into that, since we are a B school, you can't do anything without numbers. Any idea what this number would represent to you? Any guess? No guesses.
So generally to quantify.
So it can be the number of users.
Number of users. Anybody else?
So anything, any quantity in terms of anything which can be quantified,
Okay.
like any
Anybody?
sales report or
Okay. Anybody else?
Number
Salary
of
of a person.
discoveries.
I'm sorry?
Salary of a person.
Salary of a person. Okay. Any last guess? There was somebody else who was saying something.
Number of discoveries or
Number of
number of
discoveries. Okay. Now, once I've kind of quantified the data a little better, what would you now say? What does this number now represent?
monetary. It's a monetary value.
Okay. You've given me an engineer's answer, but correct, but not useful.
Size of the AI market.
Size of AI market, only 1,50,000 rupees. Is that so?
Revenue generated.
Revenue generated. What about now?
This might be the revenue generated.
This might be the revenue generated. Okay. Well, you are. You guys are thinking in the right terms now that you're thinking money, but actually, it is the amount of investment that went into Geo. Okay. Now, when you looked at the business case for Geo, Mr. Ambani said that data is the new oil. So that's why he's investing so much. Okay. It was not actually his statement. It was a British scientist who had mentioned that many years before that. But what he really meant was that the consumer data is a new oil. Okay. And when he invested that much money in Geo, okay, it was not to actually talk about or to provide connectivity. It was to actually monetize this data. And what do you mean by that? Is they have been slowly investing heavily into this universe of apps. And nowadays, you hear about Geo Mart, etc. What that really means. And if you really look at this business case, they have, currently, as of maybe a little bit more stake has been sold out, but roughly 32% of the company or 33% of the company has been sold. Okay. Can anybody tell me this, 19 billion, 808 million, how much does that convert to in rupees? Any guess? Rough answer will be okay. No answers. Come on, multiply it by 75 and tell me. So 1 billion is 7,500 crore. It will turn out to roughly 150,000 crores or 1.5 lakh crores. So essentially what that means is in 4 years or 4 or 5 years, okay, that business of data that they invested 1.5 lakh crores, okay, is now worth 4.5 lakh crores. Okay. So they've already hit 200% gain on that. So that is the value of data. That's the value of business of data. And I'm still only talking about one company and only in the Indian context. Okay. So let's work further. All right. So this is a little bit about what you had mentioned earlier. This is what I have been doing. As I mentioned, we have been building this AI company focused on energy sector for the North American market. But prior to that, as you mentioned, I was in Goldman Sachs and a lot of these kind of business models or analytics models I've been building out and authoring. Okay. And as you kind of get into the world of business, so my personal journey of leading a company called like Goldman Sachs, which is like the topmost business investment bank in the world, and going into entrepreneurship. Well, there are when you go and build a company, while you're working for somebody else, you are a cog in the machine. When you go and build your own company, you kind of are the master of your own destiny. And of course, that means that you are taking risks, but with risks, you also get rewards. And sometimes the rewards are tangibles, sometimes they are intangibles, intangibles like this, where I have had the pleasure of being with Mr. Gates to being a part of the Honorable Prime Minister's delegation to ASEAN countries and conferences and all that. Now, these are the kind of risk reward things that you do, but you are ultimately building a business. Okay. Before I continue further, any questions? Feel free to interrupt me during the as I'm speaking. I would like it to be interactive rather than a lecture. Okay, so I would like this to be a kind of an interactive session. The more questions there are, the better the discussion will be. Okay, so why entrepreneurship? Okay, it's actually a bug. It's a kida. You kind of get on with it. The first and it kind of helps you. There's a kida that kind of keeps driving you to keep building your company. To that kind of motivates you to build the organization, the business, and so on and so forth. Okay. So before I continue, all right, how many of you actually know that there are actually two different types of companies that exist? They can be what's called the SMEs or the companies that are basically having a linear growth, which are service-oriented companies, and then you have the innovation-driven companies. Okay. Any idea? Can you guys think about the difference between the two? So when Modi ji talks about Atmanirbhar Bharat, what type of companies is he talking about?
SME.
Actually both, right? So an SME business could be something like a CF firm would be an SME business, where you are getting the number of clients you get, you put the number of people, the number of hours you bill, that's the way it kind of grows, very linear. Okay, but can anybody talk about an innovation-driven organization, an example of an innovation-driven organization? Or would you
Byju's, for example?
Byju's, interesting. Why would you call that an innovation-driven organization?
So I would call that innovation because it started at a time when people were still in schools and nobody saw this pandemic coming. So it was a very new idea of taking education online and having classes. So that was, I think, innovation.
But okay, that's interesting, and Byju's is a very interesting one. But what sector are they actually? Is Byju's? What sector does Byju actually address? Does it address the formal education sector or the informal education sector?
So should be informal because right now, if you see the ads, they are saying that it to supplement your education at school, you could after school log into Byju's classes. So they're not primarily looking to substitute schools, but they're going to supplement the schooling education.
Okay, interesting. I would agree with you that it's innovation, but why would you say it is innovation, right? When you talk about innovation, any idea how would you define innovation?
So then if you would like to look at a very specific innovation, then it could be the SpaceX. So SpaceX, and because it is sending rockets, and then it was the first one to bring the rocket back to land it safely, what NASA was not able to do. So that was an innovation on their part. Like if you look at pure innovation.
Okay. Again, I think you are right. You're only getting half the answer. Okay. So would you call before this entire pandemic occurred, would you call a company like Indigo innovative. There were other airlines as well.
Yes, sir. Indigo is an innovator, sir. It conducted the entire airline business in a complete different way, sir. They had a
So,
complete different business model.
okay. So now we are talking about the two aspects of innovation, right? So the two aspects of innovation are at least the way I look at it. It is the invention multiplied by commercialization. So yes, you have an invention, but if you don't have the business model, as you said, all right, without the business model, the invention will just stay like that. So these go hand in hand, and sometimes the invention would be yours or somebody else's. Generally, the inventions are incremental. They are not normally, groundbreaking from scratch. So if you look at the innovations that SpaceX did, what they really did was they standardized rocket manufacture. Okay, so they took a proven rocket and they standardized it. But then what they did was they actually speeded up that manufacturing. Okay, by speeding up the manufacturing and almost taking it into a factory mode, unlike the kind of research mode that NASA or Boeing and others were doing, they actually made it easier and simpler to build those rockets and launch them. Okay, then they also started focusing on a particular, satellite segment. So they were not launching massive satellites; they were launching the smaller satellites. Okay, and that's the way. And in there, when you said that, yeah, they are landing the rockets. Okay, they were actually, launching, landing, and refurbishing, etc. Right? You can't, if you think about refurbishing a rocket, what are they actually doing? Right? They're not changing the rocket; they're just fitting the same thing over and over again. Okay, so that's what they did, right? So this aspect of innovation, which is lots of time lost, the multiplier into commercialization is equally very important. Most of the time, most ventures will fail on the business model rather than on invention. Okay, so that brings me to what's called a disruptive innovation. Okay, and this happens quite a bit. Okay, so even when you talk about SpaceX has been disrupting things. Okay, and invariably, what did they do? Initially, the incumbents were there, and the entrant will come at a lower strategy, lower, trajectory, and they will normally target the low end of the market. So incumbent is sitting over there, who's being pulled up by the high end of the market. They have customers who are asking them to keep adding more and more features, and they will leave people behind. So example is cloud computing. When cloud computing initially came, right, cloud computing was at that time, companies like HP, Compaq, Dell, they were selling servers to large enterprises. Each server would cost a few $1,000s and would require engineers and would require data centers and whatnot. Okay, when initial cloud computing came, it did not have all the features that, say, a bank or a critical computing company or a critical computing load it could service. But they were able to sell server time for a few dollars per hour to smaller companies, mom and pop shops, and they basically reduce the cost. Okay, and in that they basically ended up. It was an entire invention with the model of just renting time. All right, and they basically disrupted the companies, the server companies. Okay, so what you saw was HP, the stock prices fell down, Compaq getting bought out by HP, Dell or IBM selling their server businesses, etc. Okay, so that's what happens when you're looking at disruptive innovation, and you keep talking about that. Like today, Tesla, all right, again is seen as disrupting, but what are they actually disrupting? They absolutely changed the business model. Okay, they were selling earlier. People were selling. You had to go to a dealership. They were selling the car directly in a mall. Okay, they changed the way to manufacture, etc. But it was both of them together that actually changed things. If you really, lots of people initially in the initial Tesla cars, anybody knows what batteries they were putting in the initial Tesla cars? How did they assemble the batteries? No, nobody knows. So there was this entire concept that the batteries don't have enough capacity. What did they do? They basically build those battery banks using batteries from laptops.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's how they did it, right? So they actually used an invention, somebody else's invention, used it somewhere else. Okay, so understand, lots and lots of time people just think of innovation just from that invention point of view, but no, it's not really that. Okay, so having said that, startups fail. 75% of them will fail. Okay, and the reason why they will fail is because they will build something that people don't want. Okay, 42%, more than 40 times, there's no percent of the time, there's no market for something you're building. Okay, again, going back to the business model. So how do you solve this problem of building, how do you build for something, that the market wants? Any ideas? Come on, take a guess.
So they take surveys, they interpret the results, and they like prospect what can be the future
So
demand.
who would you take a survey from?
So the general public, they could have crowd, like they have online.
Okay, so if I'm doing the business of AI for energy, who would I go and talk to? The
The
general
target
public.
audience. The
I'm sorry.
target audience.
Exactly.
The target audience.
Right. You have to go and talk to the target customer segment. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm kind of walking through a little bit of how you build the ventures, and then I will spend time on actually deep diving using our company as a case study. Okay. So yeah. So the problem, as it says, the problem is avoidable. If you look at it, right, what happens is if you don't know what lots and lots of time, people think they know the problem. Okay. Only the thing is the customer knows what they really need. Okay. And what will happen is you will start with some idea and you will have to change or you will have to pivot. But you need the right team. Okay. And many a times people will think that the startups will fail because of competition. If you really look at it, right, only 19% of the time that happens. Okay. What that really means is that for the rest of the time, it's basically the business case and the business problem and the team who are a problem rather than the competition. Okay. As a startup, you don't have enough resource, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money. So you have to be absolutely laser focused. Okay. So let's go further. All right. If you literally look at it, right, the team is only coming for very short points. But so what does that mean? Okay. So there is this entire period when you're doing a venture, when you are in this very high risk period, which is called the valley of death. Okay. So what this diagram is actually showing is the risk where, initially your revenues are your cash or the cost of business is very high, and you are now, you are in a high risk area. Okay. But there are sources of funds who will be giving you funding to actually, build your venture. Now, when you are what's called in this value of death, why would people give you money? Any idea? Do you guys have an investment club in the college? Okay. Why would, any idea why would, these sources of funding exist? Angel investors or anybody else?
So
So
they believe
probably
that
on the
Yeah, go on. So according to me, like for the start of any venture, we do have to get some investment so that we have a proper flow, so that a proper foundation is being done. That's what I
But
think.
why would somebody give you money when you are in a high risk period?
So, when these potential investors see that the business is going to make profits and they basically see some sort of potential in the business, they invest in it. And when these small startups go for IPOs, these investors exit that time by selling the shares at a very high price, sir. That's how they make money.
Okay, so I've already said 75% will fail. Then what's the business case for the venture, guys? Why would they still invest?
Risk and returns.
Yes. So what's happening is, I'm sorry,
High risk, high return, sir.
high risk, high return.
Then
Okay,
expecting
so
some rewards also.
yeah. So now, if it's a VC, okay. So what is the VC doing? He's creating a portfolio of investments. Okay, so in that particular fund, it will fund say 20 startups. Okay, they are already saying out of the 20, 15 will fail. But the others, okay, that are likely to succeed are the ones that are going to give the return. Okay, and what they are absolutely afraid of, because they are picking up funds from the or from the other funding agencies. Okay, what they are absolutely afraid of is losing out on an opportunity which is likely to give high returns. So for them, a VC or a startup failing is part of the business model. So what they are really looking for is a team, is the business or the that opportunity which will give them, and that is what drives VCs. Okay, you have to understand this is an ecosystem that evolves, and it's an ecosystem or a game that's going along. All right, so just understand this. Okay, but what also happens is at various stages you have different people providing different levels of funding. Okay, so but all businesses are not the same. So if you look at businesses, or you will have product driven business or what's called a scope driven business or infrastructure driven business. Okay, like the Rovio, okay, which is who make the Angry Birds, all right? They are just creating products, and different business will require different resources, different type of talent. Okay, now where do you think Geo falls?
so infrastructure driven.
Okay, are you sure it's only infrastructure driven?
Driven as well. I guess.
I'm sorry,
Hope driven as well.
how would you say it's scope driven?
Because it is given the customer segment what they want, and it is IT driven, I guess.
And you would not
Yeah,
call it a
I
product
didn't.
driven business?
So scope is basically what I think is customer segmented, like what kind of or what particular type of audience you are focusing on. So that's what we
So,
call that particular scope.
you can argue, right? But probably it's a product and an infrastructure driven business. So you have all the products that they are building, right? They have like if you now look at it, right? They are saying that they are going to bring in a very cheap 5G phone. Okay. So they are bringing products and they are an infrastructure driven business. So if you look at GeoMart is a complete infrastructure business. All right. So they are a mix of that. Generally, nowadays you rarely find scope driven businesses. Okay. Scope driven businesses can be a lot of the services businesses, like the businesses who are logistics guys, right? Who are providing the logistics businesses. Delivery would be one, or uh, you know, or where Swiggy is going. Okay, where they are saying that they will not only set up the kitchen, they will also hire the people for the kitchen for you as well as supply it, right? So those are the ones that are kind of going over there. Okay, or even so that's where the difference lies. Okay. You are also getting some scope driven businesses who are doing rental EV cars. So who are now saying that they will not only set up the charging station, but also build the car, rental scooter or the EV scooter, as well as, give you a financing to do that. So those are some of those that are popping up now. So what happens, why I'm kind of mentioning this, these are all business model innovations. Okay. So if you know this, how do you actually build a business? Okay, we said 75% fail. Okay, you build a business by what's called a business model canvas. These are some tools that have now come out, evolved, that help you over a period of time. So what's called a business model canvas, which essentially kind of drives like this, where you kind of mention customer segments. So you have to identify the customer, which segment of the customer you're going after. Okay, what are the pains and the gains, and the jobs, right? Which is that specific thing that you're going to provide to the value proposition to the customer, right? And then this is how you actually define a business. Okay, the value proposition you would give to the channel through which you will acquire the customer, to how you are going to service the customer, and the revenue streams. Okay, so all of those are the customer side or the customer journey side. And then you kind of get into the delivery side. What are the key business activities you need to do to deliver those customer values, as well as the for those revenue streams? And from there, what resources you need, what partnerships you need, and what is the cost structure? Okay, so this is the kind of scientific way in which you break down a business. Okay, normally what we do, like my team, for any business, any product, we will build down a business model canvas, a big whiteboard with all of these segments which you keep fine tuning. Okay, but without this, you will suffer. Okay, and this is it is, but this is not the only thing. All right, now uh, you have something, what when you are building a venture, you have something what's called a beachhead market. Okay, so let's take and as I mentioned earlier, right, when you're building a venture, you don't have enough money, and you don't have enough time, and you don't have enough resource, so you have to be laser focused. How do you actually, now there's a concept of a beachhead market that allows you to figure out that whether you're laser focused or not. Any idea what a beachhead market might be? No idea. Okay, so a beachhead market, so go
I
ahead.
think the target market which we are preferring.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
So what happens is, let's take this example. Okay. Actually, before I even get into the Beachhead Market, what do you think is the value proposition of, say, Uber or Ola? Which are the customer segments Uber or Ola actually service, and what is the value proposition they give them?
So if you look at their main target was a professional, working professional, and the value proposition is fast service delivery time.
Okay.
So door
Anybody
delivery.
else?
Hello.
Yeah.
So they are serving to customers at door delivery, like if like a door delivery option, sir.
Okay. Anybody else?
So they're mainly targeting the millennials, sir. And the
Are you
value
sure? You mean I don't
yes,
use this, or my wife doesn't use it?
yes, sir, the millennials, there is a slowdown in the auto sector in our country, primarily because the millennials don't want to take the burden of owning a car and maintaining it. They simply book an Uber or a Ola, sir, for their
Okay.
transit.
Okay. So I
Like
think, what's your name? Titus, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So Titus, the thing is, it's called confirmation bias. So you are
Yes,
seeing things only from your own viewpoint.
yes, sir.
Okay. And this is one thing that you need to kind of, when we are talking about customer segment, okay, and you will learn this in marketing, that customer segment, there are multiple customer segments. How do you actually define a customer segment? Can be based on age, can be based on gender, can be based on income, can be based on location, right?
Yes, sir.
There are
Yes, sir.
so many different ways in which you will define a customer segment. But okay, right. So let's talk about you. You guys are still not seeing. There is actually a second customer segment that you are not seeing at all. What is the second customer segment for Uber or Ola? There are actually three customer segments, not just two.
Sir, urban population. We're mainly targeting the urban population.
Very coarse, right? Yes, the driver segment. Who's the third customer segment? Any idea? So there's the
Restaurants who are providing food.
no. Well, I'm not talking about the delivery side of things. So you talked about the users or the riders. You talked about the drivers. There's a third customer segment.
So
You are
the
missing.
OEMs,
Automobile,
you mean the companies?
cars.
Yes, yes. So the guys who are actually making the cars, right? Or the people who own the cars. Okay, now for each one of them, there's a separate customer value proposition that these services or these products businesses are providing. Okay, for a person like me, I don't want to deal with traffic, right? I have a car, but I don't want to deal with traffic. Okay, somebody else who may not want to own a car. Okay, I don't want to deal with, or I don't want to deal with parking. I don't want to deal with any of that thing, right? So what I'm trying to point out is that it is very important to identify the segment, the pains or the gains that you will provide, the value you will provide. And only then you can think about the channels through which you will acquire the customer and service the customer, and the cost of how you will actually make the money from it. Okay, so I'll take another use case or another business case. I have a friend who is building a SaaS business for the textile guys. Okay, the clothes that you're wearing, right? Now, if you think about it, the textile business it may look like simple, right? You go to the market and you buy a cloth, but it's not that. Somebody has to make the yarn. Somebody then has to make the fabric. Somebody then has to make the clothes. Somebody then has to sell it. Okay. So now, if you think about it, I think the fabric business or the textile business in India, I'm just trying to recall, I think it's $120 billion a year. Okay. But then, how do you define the business? Okay, the customer segment. The customer segment you will define as the cotton manufacturers in Coimbatore, or the home textile guys who make the carpets and the curtains in Panipat. Each one of them have their own pains. You cannot be broad-based. You have to be very specific. And now, when I mentioned that thing called a beachhead market, any idea anybody was thinking about that beachhead market? What does beachhead market look like? Or anybody, Google it, find out what beachhead market means. Okay. What beachhead market means is a small customer segment where all the customers have the same problem. Okay. And they are talking amongst themselves. So as an entrepreneur, you have to find that beachhead market. You know that beachhead market is there because when you are talking to customer A versus customer B versus customer C, you are not even changing your presentation. Okay, you are solving the same problem. And so what you actually do is you find the beachhead market, you solve that beachhead market, the problems for that market, and then you may go to an adjacent market. Okay, and it's important to get that focus because again, you don't have time, you cannot run after people, okay, and you don't have the money. Okay,
So,
sure, go ahead.
sorry. So is it similar to the niche market, the concept?
Yes, it's similar to a niche market, but this is more from a customer acquisition than a customer service.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, so now what happens as an entrepreneur, if you are sitting, let's say I'm sitting, right? I have my business and I'm doing energy business in Canada. Okay, from my beachhead market is in Calgary, which is an oil and gas town. They have a particular type of oil extraction business. We are only serving those guys. And I'm not even talking to the energy companies in India, simply because it's going to distract and dilute my attention and my team's attention. Okay, so it's super important to kind of build your brand in that area. You build your messaging for that area. You build your customer base. You kind of get your publicity for that area, and only then you move to another market. Okay, without that you will fail. Okay, it does not matter, and it does even whether you are setting up your own company or whether you are working for a company and you are building out a product, you will fail. Okay. Okay. Anyways, but there's another way to look at how you're building your company. Okay, and this is called this Village Capital Viral Framework, which is venture investment readiness awareness levels, which says that any company or any venture is actually it has its own maturity levels, which at different maturity levels there's different levels of funding, but the company or that is actually standing on these 8 pillars, okay, or 8 things, which is the team, the problem and vision, the value proposition, the product, the market, the business model, the scaling, and how do you actually exit? Because how do you move the company for exiting from one level of funding to the next level of funding? Okay, and this is when you actually look at it, you guys can actually download this. Okay, what it actually says is what milestone you need to hit to achieve these maturity levels. Okay, so if you have, like, let's take this one. Okay, solidifying the value proposition. Okay, evidence customers will pay. So if they are saying that B2C, you have to have 100 customers, or B2B, you have to have 5 customers. Okay. If you don't have that, you have not solidified the value proposition. It is a fantastic. These are the tools that if you use these tools, you will ensure that you don't fall in the 75% of the company or the ventures that fail. Okay. Now, what happens when you end up in a scenario like COVID? The market will change. That means you might have to pivot. And if you have to pivot, you will again use something like this to ensure that you're putting your resources, money, people, time into the right customer segment. Okay. But how do you actually figure out, whether you are solving a problem? It's called building what's called a minimum viable product, which basically means that you can use this as a quick test with customers to show what it will do, right? You not build a completely functional product, but it can be a prototype. It can be a simple app prototype, or it can be like the way they do in cars, right? They will build. They will not build the entire car. They will actually do the design with, say, with a mock-up or with a clay design, and actually get customers to look at it and give feedback. Okay, so there's an emotional design part of it. There are functional aspects of it. Okay, so you get that feedback. That is how you know you are actually going to solve the problem. Okay, that is loud. Okay, but that is what, when we are talking about getting in front of the customer and actually getting that feedback, these are the tools that you need, without which you will fail. Okay, I will speed this up. And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to find this product market fit. Okay, which is what we normally talk about: feasibility, viability, desirability. So anytime we are talking to a customer, we are always talking from a feasibility. Is this feasible to deliver? Is there a desire for it? And is it viable? Okay. So what I'm saying is, right, like if you look at this thing, you are actually talking to a customer from a conceptual point of view. Okay, without having a product built beforehand. Lots and lots of engineers actually go and say, I'll build an app and I'll go and show it and it will work. Doesn't work like that, because you have not got that critical commercialization aspect of it. Okay. And essentially, I'll skip this one. Okay, so I think I just have 2 or 3 more slides on this theoretical part before I go into my business side. Okay, so but what that means is, all right, there's a huge amount of what you call this is coming from things like lean startup, where you are continuously experimenting. You are working on the customer experience, and only once you have found the product market fit do you actually go into real product build. And over there, then you are looking at identifying the growth channels and how do you actually expand those channels and the customers through that. Okay, so without this, you will again, if you don't go down this path, chances are you will fall in the 75% of those ventures. Okay, so especially when we are talking about the digital growth cycle, all right, what you are trying to figure out is how you're going to, lots of time what happens is if you look at Byju's, okay, somebody mentioned Byju's. Where do you think they are spending majority of the money? Are they spending the money on, building the product, or are they spending the money on customer acquisition?
So customer acquisition.
Okay, so can you tell me how is Byju's doing the customer acquisition?
So aggressive advertising.
Yes, right. So when you are in that mode, a whole lot of your money goes in just customer acquisition. Okay, What you want to do is you may want to acquire the customer, but then you want to retain the customer. Okay. Now, how do you think Byju's from a price point of view? How is Byju's retaining the customer? What is their business model, innovation over there, where they are saying that I'm going to ensure that the customer loyalty and retention occurs?
So
Any idea?
Sir, no?
Yeah.
So through technology, they are doing their business, sir. Like
No,
they
no,
are.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. But customer retention, how are they ensuring customer retention?
Sir, they have a good customer relationship model. I mean, they connect a lot with their customers because I have heard that they also call them and ask them if they have any doubts or if they are enjoying the service or if there are anything else is if they need. So they have a good brand in which they
Are,
actually care.
are they calling all the customers?
At the beginning, when people have just joined, they try to do it so that people have become more and more inclined towards it and they use it on a regular level.
Okay. So first thing where they made business model innovation is they are actually charging you for the entire year. Okay. So what that means is, so this is coaching classes and all that, right? So they are basically incentivizing you to go to anybody else. Okay. As a parent who's got his kids on Byju's, you will be saying, hey, I'm not going to send this kid somewhere else. Okay. Then they are picking up metrics. Every time you call, it's cost. There's a person who's to call somebody, right? A person can only call X number of people in a day. Okay. There's the infrastructure cost and cost of calling, cost of paying people. They will not call any and everybody. They will only call people who they are finding that their engagement is going down. If somebody is logging in on a daily basis, there's no need to call that person. On the other hand, if somebody is not really logging in on a daily basis, there's no need to call that person either. The chance of shifting him is low. It's only when somebody is slipping from one category to the other category do you call to ensure you retain those guys. Okay, that's where these metrics come into play, which are called R metrics, or they are actually called the pirate framework. And this thing, which is called the digital marketing funnel, this works heavily in the digital marketing side, but it's a funnel. And normally, what you end up is almost at every level, you lose roughly around 1:100 kind of thing. Okay, so this is where Facebooks of the world and Google of the world make money. Okay, between eyeballs to actual conversion, and finally, what you want is a referral, right? So somebody else who's a referral, because the cost of referral is the cheapest. Okay, so I'll skip this, and I think I'm down to the last two slides on this. So I mentioned this. All right. Now, the game over here is, yes, you are picking up money. On the other side, the game is you are building your valuation. So you will pick up your money. Okay. And at different stages, you will have different investors who are willing to put different amounts of money. Okay. So the investors at the early stage will say, only give a certain amount of money because the risk is high. Okay. But when you have to grow, the amount of money you need to put is higher. So a next stage investor will come in. And an investor, all of these investors will say, I want a 5x or a 7x return or a 10x return at each stage. Okay. So what you do is you have these thing called the seed capital or early stage investor or late stage investor. Okay. And ultimately, your aim is they are all looking for an exit. So every time you are looking for an exit, you are actually, you get into an IPO. Essentially, all the investors, including the founders, will sell their proportion of stake and make money. Okay. So this is, at different stages, what is the round size? and who will be. So what does it mean, right? So pre-seed means you have a pre-revenue or pre-product, and then at seed level you kind of got evidence of product market fit. So you may still not have the fully developed product, okay, but then you kind of get into scaling, right? So and when I use my company as a use case, you guys can ask questions on that, okay. Essentially, this is how those funding levels work. So if you see, the seed valuation was 7.5 mil last year, and the average funding rounds were 1.1 mil, right? But by the time you got to Series A, that 7.5 mil valuation had reached 22 mil. Okay, so that is 3 times valuation. And if you then go to Series B, that had again almost tripled, and the Series B investments had also tripled. So ultimately, what is the game is, at every stage you are hitting those. If you go to the viral thing, you're hitting those milestones. You put in some money initially, and you are ensuring that you're hitting those milestones and those valuations, and you're getting these 100, 200, 300 time jumps. So if a seed investor comes in now and he's looking for 7 or 8 years down the road, he'll exit. He's basically looking at saying that he's going to exit at, say, Series B. Okay, so that he's kind of getting that 10x return. That is the name of the game over here. Okay, so that brings me to my company. So we are, as I said, we are focused on AI/ML for oil and gas and energy. Okay, and focused on the Canadian market. Now over there, essentially they have been challenged by 3 things. The oil and gas industry has been challenged by commodity prices, as well as climate change, and now COVID came in, which brought down. So climate change was bringing in where renewables were coming in and pulling away from oil. You were getting into EVs, right? From heating based on gas in the colder countries to electricity based heating in the houses. Okay, so what that was meaning was that you are actually moving away from this entire business. Okay, and let me tell you, right, the oil and gas sector, okay, any idea of how big the oil and gas sector is globally? Anybody can take a guess.
So it's very huge. It's difficult to guess because Aramco is basically oil and gas, and it's the biggest company. So
yeah, but what is the yearly market for oil and gas? Come on. Okay, you know that, right? And nothing can move without energy today. Okay, when the entire country shut down, okay, IOC, they had to ensure that they are putting up kitchens for their the dhabas on the road shut down. They had to actually open kitchens for the people who were carrying the tanker drivers and the drivers who were moving the gas cylinders. Okay, because the dhaba shut down, right? Without that, think about it, what would have happened? Okay, so yeah, you're not on the road. Your petrol and diesel demand has gone down, but the gas, cooking gas demand has not gone down. Okay, if you think about the bread that you eat, think about how much energy that is needed to just get that bread into your home. Okay, so not only do you need, the tractors need energy to plow the field, to the fertilizer to be delivered over there, to the harvesting that occurs, to before that single slice of bread, which costs probably the loaf of bread that costs 5 or whatever, right? That lands on your. So you cannot do without energy. So again, my question is, how big is you said Aramco is big, but how big, what is the size of the energy market in a business per year around the world?
So some
No,
some $1 trillion maybe.
it's $15 trillion. Okay, that's the scale of this business. Okay. Now, what they are where so they were, of course, right. They are now being challenged by these three challenges of COVID, commodity prices and climate change. Okay, so what these operations need to do is they need to reduce their cost. Okay, improve their productivity, reduce emissions, improve safety. You are talking about pretty dangerous operations, right? Anybody who saw, Deep Horizon, that thing that blew up in the Gulf Coast or Gulf of Mexico, okay, you're talking about really, explosive scenarios, okay. So the challenge for them is, so what we saw as an opportunity was, yes, that particular segment, which is Calgary or the Alberta market. By the way, that particular area, I think, has the second or the third or the fourth largest oil reserves in the world. Okay, so we saw that there's an opportunity to now bring in the benefits of AI/ML. So essentially, what's happening is these four things of cheaper sensors, scalable AI/ML solutions with big data and cloud. They were able to now allow us to provide these segments or solutions, okay, that at a lower cost, at a higher scale. And of course, there were certain other sectors, right? Why do you want to do it? The market for AI/ML globally is growing and is expected. It was expected to hit 4 billion before 2025, before the COVID days. After COVID, is actually expected to even become bigger. Okay, the reason was, while the companies were a little reticent earlier, right? With COVID, with digitalization and being able to, people were like, how do you, the data is sitting in a paper, I can't give data. And then all of a sudden you could not go into the offices. You could not give data. Okay. All of a sudden, businesses started becoming digital. So the expectation is by 2025, that number is actually going to be 5 billion rather than 4 billion. Okay. But reality was, if you think about it, right, why we kind of saw an opportunity, a lot of the investments occurred when oil was at $100 per barrel. But now with commodity price at $30, they are absolutely looking at. So I explained that, right? Customer segment, Canadian customer segment, that particular market, pain, right? These are important things to understand. Only then you will deliver the value. Okay. At the same time, technologically, the AI algos were maturing. Okay. So these are all the things. And of course, there are a number of things that you can actually deliver. But when you are in a kind of analytics kind of business, invariably, and especially when it's B2B, okay, businesses look at analytics along this thing. Initially, they look for efficiency, being able to do things at a cheaper cost. Then they look at analytics adding capacity, and finally look at revenue. Okay, adding revenue. This is a general thing. You cannot, okay, if you kind of go and tell a business that, look, you can deploy AI and come up with a new product, generally they will not live with it, right? They will not be able to accept that. Okay, so it is efficiency to capacity to revenue. Okay, how we've been bringing things in, okay, is where we are deploying distributed AI, where we are treating. So if you look at, in today's day, any idea, how would you define AI today? What is AI to you?
So probably it is everywhere. Like be it you're talking about you're entering into any restaurant or hotel to like going 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 into digital. If you look at all the things, anywhere you go, you're going to a multinational company and the door is opening automatically. Then that is also there. And if you look at web
So
search where you are,
yeah, but let me ask you this, right? So you can what when you have a door sensor, it's a very simple kind of thing, right? It's an IR detector, okay, where there's a single threshold, it goes beyond that threshold, it will just open. Okay, it's dumb. A cat will come, it will open as well. So what is AI for you?
and so
So
probably when we are
basically,
searching analytics.
Without human intervention, if the processes are going on a good note, so that defines. Yeah.
Can you give me an example of
So,
AI?
sir, AI is something
Like
that
sir, in traditional manufacturing sector, all the processes are followed by the human workers. If those are automated based on the decisions that the human put on the system, so that is the example of AI.
so AI
Mm,
can be
but
used in
but hold
both.
on, hold on. I can simply write some rules. Would that be AI? If then else statement, would that be AI?
No, sir.
Then what is AI?
Sir, if a machine writes the rule, then it's AI.
If a machine writes the rule. Okay, interesting. You are on the right track. Can somebody give me an example of AI?
So
May I
Siri
know?
and I.
Speech,
Siri?
sir,
Okay.
speech recognition, sir, speech recognition.
So between speech recognition and Siri, what's the difference?
Sir, I mean, algorithmic machine writing that can be termed as an ML, the machine learning. And
Okay.
so I'll give an example of a machine learning is that, I mean, if a camera has all the codes and the algorithms to find that the person in front of that is a animal. Let's take it as a dog. So if the
Okay.
algorithms are set in a camera, then it will say that, yes, this is a dog. So that's ML. So, but instead of a dog, if we get some other animals, then the camera won't recognize it in a ML part. So, but in AI, it tries to blend in and changes the algorithm. So, it tries to, what I'll say, depict the other parts also. So,
Okay.
that's
So
somewhat of
so
AI.
okay. So let's go back to that example between Siri and speech recognition. Okay. So what is the difference between you can actually speak to a computer, it will just type out what you're speaking, which is speech recognition. So what's the difference between speech recognition and Siri?
Sir,
So,
Siri is a chatbot. Sir, it
Okay.
can
Yeah, go
reply,
ahead.
revert our
Okay.
queries.
Okay.
We
It can
ask.
reply, revert. What is it actually doing? Continue. You are on the right track. What is Siri actually doing? Sorry, I didn't get your name. Nandini.
Sir, yes, sir. Sir, actually, it is just acting like a human being,
Okay.
but
Now you
machine.
got that right. It is acting like a human being. What is it doing? It's understanding the context of what you are asking,
Yes, sir.
right? It is understanding and it is also learning the context under which you are doing. So AI, the difference between ML and AI. So ML example will be like credit risk. You have old data, based on that you are making a judgment call whether this loan will fail or not. That is ML. Okay. AI understands the context of the situation and responds accordingly. Okay. That is the contextual part of it. And that is where the difference between AI and ML lies. Okay. Another example of AI, AI is self-driving car. It understands the context of how you drive and the environment, and it will react accordingly. Okay. So lots of times these kind of come in blend, right? But think of this as if you were to think from a mathematical point of view, these are functions. right? It's a function, pure and simple. But AI is a extremely non-linear function with loads of branches, which are automatically it is learning from data and training itself. That's the difference between AI, which basically runs on neural networks, okay? And ML will not run on neural network. It will mostly run on statistical models. That's the basic difference between the two. Okay. So what we've been doing over here, how we've been putting things together. So what we've been doing is, if you think about an oil field, right, there are a lot of wells. Now the wells interact with each other. So when a well pushes down, pumps down, it changes the pressure of the reservoir, and it has an impact on the nearby wells. Okay. On top of it, what happens is the machinery in there will also change, right? The machinery will change, the way the machinery will degrade, etc., so on and so forth, right? So now all of these things are correlated. And the other aspect of AI, what it can do, which kind of goes beyond the scope of human understanding, is when you have massive amount of data, it can identify those correlations and interrelated states. Okay, when this happens, then that thing happens. It is able to identify those transient states. Okay, so that is what we are doing over here. We are actually deploying AI to enable the oil field optimization. Okay, once you optimize it, you can actually predict what's going to happen. You can actually then reduce the cost of operation. You can actually help them increase their productivity and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is what we are doing. Now that is, I've talked about the niche and how it kind of deploys. That's fine. All right. But we are also taking the same when you are building things. So technically, you are again taking the same components and deploying them into a second market. So not only one market, but a niche market, right? So we are taking it from that the Canadian oil and gas operators, and then moving that into the electrical operators. But again, electrical operators in a particular segment, which is called a microgrid. Okay. Now in electricity, if you think about it, electrons used to flow from the power plant, and the money used to go from the consumer. Okay. But now what's the change that's occurring? As EVs are coming in, the demand changes like that. All of a sudden in a locality, demand will change. Okay. And if you are today, as those things are coming up, the power demand is going to shoot up by 30 to 40% over the next few years. In order to supply that much, you have to do a massive infrastructure upgrade, which is a massive cost. Or alternately, what you can do is deploy the distributed energy resources wherever you need it. So if an EV is standing under your house, you can actually put solar panels and generate the electricity and supply it, right? On top of it, you can also throw a battery over there, store it when somebody else needs to supply the electricity. So the entire business model is changing from unidirectional, or one way electrons flow, the other way money flows, to now a bidirectional flow. That to smaller transactions, more transient transactions. Okay, that's extremely complicated. Again, very difficult for people to actually figure out, and that's again where we are deploying AI to actually figure that one out. Okay. So, but you can't actually, right? Now it kind of comes down to the business model. You actually have to have a business, the go-to market, the channel through which you will supply. Okay, as a startup, I cannot actually go in front of everybody. So now you put a channel strategy, which are go-to-market partners to consortia to direct consumers. Okay. Now, each one will require, remember, right, when I was talking about the business model canvas, how are you going to acquire and service? Each one of them require different type of resources. For the customers, direct to customer, I might need, account managers. But when it's a GTM, I need relationship managers. Okay, a different pricing model, a different price, either it's a transfer pricing to cost plus model to, whatever, right? These are all different things. Okay, so these all fall into the business model. And then, of course, you are always building your IP. In our case, our IP stands on mastery of data to the model precision to the platform to deliver and the business model. Okay, form these all form the value proposition of the company. This is what the investors actually invest into. Okay. And of course, you are then looking at, how you are continuously looking at traction, how you are achieving traction, customers, the market recognition, and so on and so forth. Okay. And the ecosystem. You can't actually deliver without. So there's an entire ecosystem that we work with of enablers with both in India and Europe and in Canada. Okay, that actually allow us to get there. Okay, so that's so, and the last thing is the team. So you can't actually do other things. So I, as a founder, have to actually not only look at the three pillars of the company, which is the product, marketing, and finance. Okay, the company actually evolves on that. So you are actually continuously hiring. You are hiring leadership. You are hiring the developers. You are hiring partners. You are hiring board members. You are hiring investor or recruiting investors. So that's that. Right. I'll stop over here. I think I've gone over time, but open to questions.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful insights. I have a few questions that I've received from our audience, so I will tell you one of them. Yeah.
Sure.
So, according to you, sir, what is the future of AI?
Future of AI. It is going to be. So yeah, I think before I answer the question, of course we are always hiring, right? As I said, and that. So the future of AI is going to become super prevalent. Okay, it is already becoming prevalent. Okay, if you type on your phone, AI is running over there. It is helping you type. All right, it will enable, as I said. Okay, it's a competitive advantage, and we are now in a global kind of thing. Okay, now if you look at let's look at COVID. Okay, they were able to identify vaccine candidates by deploying AI, right? Which receptor, which type of molecule will actually work based on deploying a whole lot of sequence-based and pattern-based recognition. Okay, some things that would have taken them, many years, it took them a few months. Even the tests that they were generating, they deployed AI to identify which test will actually work on, right? So AI is going to come. So I can give you two answers. One is an engineer's answer. It is going to be ever prevalent. The other side of it is kind of, it's also going to shake up the what you call the employment industry. Okay, so what I mean by that, right? So let me explain. How is that is shaking? I'll explain it from a product that we are building. Okay, we are building a product with the engineering companies or oil and gas engineering companies. Now, what these complex plants, they are designed on engineering drawings, and they have been designing them on engineering drawings for many decades. Okay, what we've been doing is taking those engineering drawings, deploying computer vision, NLP, relationship modeling to actually digitize that. Okay, so now, now what we've done is we built a digital twin of the plant. Okay, but as we digitize more and more of these plants, what happens? We are actually learning how the engineers are designing things. So AI will now go and start suggesting new designs on its own. Okay, now it is going to disrupt a lot of the engineering activities. For the engineering companies, it reduces the cost, but it is a threat to the engineers. Okay, I'm just giving you that context. Okay, so I absolutely believe, right, AI will enable a lot of efficiency. It will cause a lot of shift as well. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your inputs. And the next question is AI the next revolution for oil and gas industry? And how does the demand for AI has improved the working conditions and costs over the sector?
Okay. So certainly, this sector is looking at newer and newer ways. So AR, VR. Okay, so let's take again COVID. People needed to do inspections of plants. Okay, and now you cannot actually stop an inspection of an oil and gas plant because, hey, you are talking about explosive things. Okay, but the engineer could not travel to the plant. They actually started deploying AR, VR, and AR, VR enabled, remote visual things so that they could actually do remote inspections. Okay, so it will in the oil and gas and energy sector. Okay, so let's take energy sector when you're talking about, windmills. Okay, so let's talk about, all right. Now, today, the windmill will respond. It's not a controllable thing, unlike, say, a thermal plant, right? In a thermal power plant, you throw coal, it will generate that much power. A windmill will react to the environment. A solar plane will react to the environment. Okay, now the weather condition on the east of Bangalore is very different right now from the west of Bangalore. Okay, you cannot even say, right, how that individual, if you have two assets on east of Bangalore and west of Bangalore, how the two are going to, you can't even generalize that, right? It is humanly impossible. So in all of these things, AI is now coming in to help address these things and essentially what we are calling virtual power plants, right? Your EV comes in, you have some power at home, somebody else has got a power at home, you can collect that and supply the city. Okay, so these complicated things is where AI is coming in and helping. Okay, certainly helping reduce the cost of extraction to cost of transport to cost of sale. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for your wonderful inputs. So, as we are running out of time, we have to conclude with the session. And hope you guys had a great time.
Thank you, guys. It's a privilege to propose a vote of thanks to our esteemed guest, Mr. Amardeep Sibia, sir, and ever enthusiastic audience. I, Satyajit Nanda, on behalf of Dot Club IBS-Hyderabad, extend gratitude to our speaker for gracing us with their presence. Sir, your experience and knowledge has given us major insights of how artificial intelligence can be useful for our business. A huge thanks to the entire team for making this event a successful one and our beloved seniors for their guidance. I also like to thank our coverage partner, Newswire, and promotional partner, IBS Messenger, for promoting our event. Hope to see you guys in the upcoming guest lectures. Thank you and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And I'll sign off by saying stay safe, and enjoy the holiday season that's coming up. Bye.
Thank you so much. I hope you are taking care too.
Sure. Bye.
Yes, sir. Take care, sir.
Small request, guys. Audience, please stay back. Rest people can leave. Thank you for joining.